what is your role in an emergency? So it's obvious an emergency. You had to drag them out of the water, get them on the boat. What is your role then? And it can happen, as you know, as scuba divers, it happens a little more often. We're doing things that may cause more problems. So your role is to know that this can happen, and when it does, your action can save people. That's the idea, or keep it from getting worse, whatever is going on. Oops, did I go the wrong way?
Oh no, someone's collapsed. The scene is safe. He appears unresponsive. I don't see any life-threatening bleeding. Sir, can you hear me? Sir, are you okay? He's unresponsive and not breathing. Call 911, go get the AED and the first aid kit.
I'll call 911, get the AED and first aid kit.
And 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. One and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and
Here's the AED and first aid kit. EMS is on the way. I'll go wait for them.
Attach pads firmly to person's bare chest as shown. Plug-in connector. Don't touch person. Analyzing.
Clear.
Shock advised. Press flashing shock button.
Clear.
Shock delivered. Start CPR.
3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 8 and 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. One and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10.
Right, so that's a little. That little video is what you're supposed to do out there. Now, some of that's already done, calling for, if you're swimming back to the boat, calling for help, and that would be the equivalent of calling 911. The boat is going to take care of whatever they have to do to call the divers in and get the people on the shore ready for this, whatever it is, all of that. But if you're dragging somebody over to the boat, they're probably not breathing. That's the hard part, is giving them breaths every 5 seconds while you're taking your gear off, while you're taking their gear off, while you're swimming back to the boat, all those things at once. That's what makes it so weird sounding, but doing it is a little different. Like I said, we had a little playing around in the pool with the dive shop, and John, I was rescuing him, and it turns out, what's his last name? Longhopper. You wouldn't know looking at him, but he sinks like a rock. It's amazing. Pull the VC out from under him, and he went straight down. No floating at all. So it's amazing. Wow. So I realized, okay, you get them all the way back to the boat, get somebody there to help you, and then you pull their VC out from under them, unless they have a wetsuit on. Anyway, so the first thing you have to worry about now is you. your health and safety. So diseases and all that kind of stuff. So this is why she's putting on gloves. There might be a barrier if you're going to give breaths. So this is the barrier we generally are carrying around with us as instructors on the boat. So you can get this, put it on your belt, and have it with you at all times. Or you can do what I did, which is buy the keychain, and it's not something like this, but it is a barrier. It does protect you from their breath, put it that way. All right, so this is just a little thing about lowering your risk of catching something. You wash your hands. You don't want to give that to them. Use personal. We all know what PPE means, right? After 2 years of doing that, and then how to handle it, what to do with it. By the way, in Pima County, if you end up using gloves, getting blood on it, put it in a plastic container, right? Hazardous material. It's another great use for duct tape. Wrap it around there to lock it down, and then throw it in the trash. That's how you would get rid of it, unless if you're a medical situation, there's people that will come and get that from you. But for us, that's what Pima County wants you to do. And I assume Maricopa does too. I haven't really, they try to read these things, and they're in legal speak. I have no idea. I tell people I'm waiting for my grandson to graduate from law school, and he can explain it to me. All right, so being prepared, that's important. Most of us should carry various items on our bag when we go on the boat. Certainly the instructors and the dive masters do. And then that should be also being prepared anywhere. So the main thing is, when you're prepared and you've taken some training, you have confidence to act. So seeing the situation is the one part, that's the hard part really. The next step is stepping in to help. I was doing some 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds, my daughter's kindergarten, and they can't do the compression. So I asked them, what is it that your job is then? And I'm telling them, here's what you're gonna see. You'll see somebody laying on the ground, not moving, and you're gonna see all the adults standing around going, just not doing anything. And here's what they're thinking. This is not happening. That's what they're thinking. They're frozen. So your job is to start yelling. We thought that was a good idea, by the way. And what do you yell? So call 911, call 911. Just say that over and over and get them out of that. So that's our job, is to not get into that or break ourselves out of it as quickly as possible to give that person help. So that's pretty obvious. You can always, but only if you act, only if you help. Step in. All right, so this is something people ask me, can I get into legal trouble? I'm not sure about Mexico. I do not know if more than a bottle of scotch or 50 bucks will get you out of anything there, but they must have some rules about this. In the US, it is, as long as you're trained, well, you don't even have to be trained, as long as you just do what you're trained to do and follow the law. So you saw that list of in the video. It came up with a list of do this until, and then those things it said, right? You're too tired, the scene becomes unsafe, they wake up, the ambulance gets there, or somebody's there to help you, and they'll take over. So in Arizona, for instance, you don't have to act. You kind of do, you have to call. Evidently, people were videoing dying people with their phone and not calling. So they put that in the law. So that's in the law. Just because, so I was driving down the speedway, and there had been an accident, and the guy was the motorcycle, and the guy was laying out on the road, and there was somebody, as I was driving by, and there was somebody on their phone. You can't guarantee that they're calling 911. So that's the first thing I rolled down the window. There was a whole bunch of people there, so I didn't want to stop. And I just said, are you calling 911? And they said yes. So always be sure if you see something like that. But you need to call. But once you get started, you have to stick with it until those things that you saw there, those are in the law. So even the state can't put an S on your shirt and call you super. If you play sports, you know what hitting the wall means. You just cannot do it. Your muscles will not obey you. You can stop them, obviously. Right? And you're going to do your best to save their life. Does it mean in the US, by the way, that you can't get sued? This is the US, come on. But it means that it'll just get chucked out. So they can't go much farther with that. Because that's what the law is there for, to protect you from liability. The odds are an adult with sudden cardiac arrest has about a 10% chance. That's it. With an AED though, it goes up quite a bit, but even then it's less than half. That's an adult. Kids are a totally different thing. And it says learn about the laws. I tried to read the law, and again, there's a lot of legal stuff in there, and it's, well, yes, you're protected here, but not here, blah, 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 and all that. So you kind of have to, I just got bored with it and said, okay, whatever. Has anybody ever done this, by the way? Had to do it? The last time I had to do anything like this, I was 18, so that was a while ago. Before they invented CPR, actually. And AEDs, right?
I guess, was the person revived?
Yeah, the odds are low. Odds are low. However, as I try to point out, the odds are low, but they're not zero. We don't know what their chances are. So our job is to not worry about any of that. Our job is to give them the chance, whatever that is, give them the chance. And what I tell them is you keep the brain alive if it can be. You keep the brain alive long enough for the magic in the hospital. I mean, they can take your heart out and put a new one in. So they know how to do this if there's any chance at all. Did you have a question?
No, me and
Oh, you-
other Sean Pipes and that, we rescued a person who passed out right at Himalaya Bay. And so like, we went the whole camp pulled together. Dell brought his truck right down to the beach to put him on a backboard, threw him in the back of the truck, drove him out on the road and that. The road was so bumpy and at the speed that Dell was going down that road, they think it probably restarted her heart because she started breathing.
An old-fashioned AED.
Yeah. Because she started breathing on her own again once we got out onto the paved road.
So- It was about 60 miles an hour on Washpet Road.
Probably even faster than that.
So
Once we
that'll,
were-
that'll get your baby coming or start your.
Right on, those are the two things it'll be good for.
Yeah, so a cop saw us going like 100 miles per hour heading to Hermosillo and pulled us over and quickly assessed the situation, called ahead and had an ambulance meet us and transferred them to the ambulance.
Sweet.
For that. So the person recovered. I don't think they've ever been cleared to dive again, but yeah, they survived.
Well, now there's a hospital in San Carlos.
Yeah, right out in front. I mean,
Yeah.
as you're coming in,
Right.
big one.
Yeah.
It was in the Riscate.
I know.
Well, San Carlos would be closer to
Been there to see it.
Hermosillo. At the time, though, I think that was just the first aid
There was no place else.
setting. Yeah, so yeah, Hermosillo was the more appropriate place to take.
Had somebody close their hand in the door and you went over to the Riscate. They just, I don't remember what they did. It wasn't a lot. Well, and then he donated, I don't remember how much money he donated for what they did for him. Anyway, so in Arizona too, this is part of the law. You have to ask consent if they can talk to you. So if they're able to talk to you in a rational way, they have to say yes. And if they say no, it's no. Can't help. But you can, and this is what it says, before you touch them, you have to do this. If you think though that this is a life-threatening thing, you can call. And let the EMTs, they're trained for dealing with people. So they let them deal with it. Get the ambulance, as I just say, if you think you need that ambulance coming, just call. Don't think anymore, you'll talk yourself out of it. Just get them coming, then deal with whatever's happening. But on the boat, again, you just have the captain call in and recall everybody. all that.
Plus, it's help for you. It's help because you don't realize how quickly your arms are gonna get tired of doing that. Within 2 minutes, you're gonna want out. So,
Yeah, 2 minutes, the research has shown 2 minutes, even somebody who's in good shape, start to lag after 2 minutes. That's why you want to get help. Get people to help you. And the AD is going to come back every 2 minutes to tell you, okay, it's time for you to stop and me to do something, and that's a good time to switch if you can. So anyway, you need to ask permission before you can touch somebody. We're talking about adults who can give permission. Kids can't give you permission.
That's a parent or legal guardian.
Or if nobody fesses up that that's their kid, you have permission. They can't give it to you. That's a legal thing. It's like if somebody says no, and then they go unconscious, now you have permission to help. All right, so if a person appears unresponsive after you look, do a quick check. So how do you check? You're yelling at them. Don't wake them up. The EMTs are going to come. If anybody's ever had this done to you, you're not going to stay asleep. If you can possibly wake up, you will. This really hurts. But you give them a good shot here, yell at them. And if they end up being able to talk to you, you ask questions. So Red Cross, they just say SAM. So signs and symptoms, medical conditions, and allergies. SAM. A is the allergies. So you're asking these simple questions, and you may be the only one that knows this stuff when EMTs get there. The same thing is true if the person you get them onto the boat, you ask them these kind of questions and have somebody write it down or try to remember it, so I would have to write it down nowadays. And they may be the only one by that time that can tell the docs what's going on. All right, cardiac emergencies, and this is important because Dan has realized that many of the people who drowned had a heart attack. People who, because they were diving, they didn't look any farther. They don't do an autopsy, they don't look at anything else. They drowned because they were in the water. So the data isn't there when they go back and look more carefully. They see there's a lot more heart attacks than we thought. Right? So does anybody know the difference between a heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest? A heart attack is your heart isn't getting oxygen. Your heart is dying. Heart muscles are dying. Sudden cardiac arrest, the heart isn't functioning properly and is not able to pump blood. Really, there's a lot of reasons that can be happening. The automated, sorry, I taught this class all morning.
Oh.
The automated system is looking for fibrillation, meaning all your muscles in your heart are working independently. The node that keeps control of all the electrical systems. These are things you probably don't want to actually know what's really going on in there because it's pretty scary actually. Anyway, all your muscles are working independently, so there's no pump. Or it's looking for cardia or for tachycardia, which means that the heart is moving so fast and the blood can't get into the chambers. So it's pumping, but there's nothing in there to pump, or very little. So whatever it is, oxygen isn't getting to the brain. That's the point. That's the difference between the two. The other difference is one of them, they're still talking to you. There's time. Usually there's time. Sudden cardiac arrest, they're in the middle of a sentence and they're gone. They're on the ground, just like that. Because it's a faint. Has anybody ever fainted? So you know what it feels like. That's what's happening. But they're not coming back from that. All right, so this one is just a quick one. If you don't want to put your mouth on their mouth, and you don't have any other barriers, you get emergency services called in. You can just start pumping. And I will say, you mentioned about getting tired. You will, but and I noticed in the classes before that I asked them to do 2 minutes, 5 of them, 5 cycles. It's 30 compressions and 2 breaths 5 times. That's about 2 minutes, and they're complaining how tired they are. And it's true, but in a real situation, does anybody jump out of perfectly good airplanes here? if we did iFly, those guys are nuts. But they're adrenaline junkies, right? They want that. We don't, unless it's a truck going by you, cutting you off on the freeway, your heart rate goes up and you may get a little shot. We don't really know what this is going to be like. How many dead bodies do you find nowadays? See, maybe none, unless it's a funeral. You don't just see them, or you're over on Grand and Albernon. But it's something that will cause adrenaline. So once you get into this, you're going to be able to do this longer than you think, and you actually have to kind of get that under control. So there is an upper limit on how fast you can pump, and you can't be doing this. That's a tachycardia. So how do you deal with that? You take, and this could happen on the boat. You've just brought them back in. You've got it's a help on the boat, and now everybody's looking at you. What do I do now? You're the one who brought them in. What do I do? Well, take a big breath. Take a deep breath. It's a combat breath, or not a tactical breath, or a yoga breath. Just
And sing the song, Staying Alive. I know how corny it sounds, but it paces you.
and actually, staying alive is what we were teaching, and it's still good. 100, it's 102, 103 beats per minute. But we'd like you to go a little higher than that now. And sadly, if you know any little kids where you've spent an hour on Baby Shark, it's not actually sad because it's an earworm. It never goes out of your head. And that one is 110. So that one is fun. But you can actually search on songs to do CPR by. There is a rap group called that, by the way, and do not use their rap in your head. Just don't. Anyway, there's a million songs out there. Any generational song, somebody you'll know will have it'll tell you the tempo and the beat of that song on that list. And there's videos out there to play with. British ones, by the way, are a little darker than the American ones. They're all still funny. And you can just get those and play them and get a pillow and practice doing compressions. The more you do that, the more your body will just get the right beat. You won't have to worry about it anymore. You just go right into it. Anyway, but you can just do this. Then you're going to really need somebody to help you. Just doing this for minutes and minutes, a long time is going to be tough. All right, so just remember you're doing compressions followed by breaths, except in the case of drowning. So I put that in there because when we're taking the class, the rescue class, what do they tell you to do? You do 2 packing breaths, what we call that. So you give them a couple of breaths to clear the lung. Where does that water go? All right, so just as a warning, get out of their way. The water's coming out their mouth. And actually, if you give them too much air when you're giving them breaths, that can also happen. But this time, their whole stomach content's going to come out. And if you've got a barrier, you don't have to worry about it. But now you got to clean that up before you give them more breaths. It's best to not give them too much air. What the Red Cross, how they say it is, give them just enough air to get the chest to begin to rise. And that works for everybody, babies and adults. Just enough air for their chest to begin to rise, and you're good. Does it guarantee they won't throw up? No, it doesn't. All right, so working together, as we talked about, as you were mentioning before, you need to get somebody to help you. 2 minutes is a long time, and you start to slack off at about that time. So that's when you need to be changing. And if you've got people helping you and you start to feel tired, to give this person their best possible chance, you say, I'm tired, I need somebody to step in and help me now. As we're going back and forth every 2 minutes between who's doing compressions and breaths. If you're just tired, then you say, I'm tired, and switch right then. And that gives the person a better chance.
And when do you try to, you're going to
Yes. So what I'm going to do is show you, this is the main thing about an AED. So these are simple ones. The ones that are out there in the world are way more complicated now. You just open it up, find the pads. By opening up the thing to get to the pads, the machine turns on. They discovered people aren't turning them on, so the manufacturers just make it more automatic. You open it up, turn it on, put the pads on, and there's pictures. You don't even have to know how to read it. There's pictures on exactly where to put them, and then you do what the computer tells you. Once this is on, It's controlling the whole thing. And you try, and adults have a hard time with this because we jump ahead, we think we know what's coming next. They gave it to 10-year-olds who don't listen to anybody, but they somehow listen to the computer, mostly because they didn't already know. So in about 10 minutes, I think it was 10 or 15 minutes, they handed them and said, figure it out, it'll save lives. And they figured it out because all they did was turn it on.
Apply pads to patient's bare chest. Plug in pads connector next to flashing light.
Okay, so what did it say?
Plug in the pad.
Put the pads on.
Put the pads on, you already did it. So it's put the pads on, then plug it in. In this case, if you plugged it in first, this is just a trainer, it doesn't shock. But if you plug it in, then it thinks pads are on and it goes about its business. The newer ones, say in the last decade or so, a lot of them will, you don't plug anything in, you put pads on, it's got sensors in the pads that tells the computer if it's got a hookup and all that stuff. So then it's just annoying when it keeps telling you to put the pads on, put the pads on. I did, put the pads on, put the pads on. It means you don't have a good connection, whatever the reason. So that's the main thing. When you hook it in, when you get it in Arizona, you can just go grab it. Somebody locks it up, they're liable. So all the boxes, no matter what they say, it doesn't matter. You just get it and go. There should be an alarm in there that sometimes I've noticed, because we do some maintenance on these things, they put them in backwards and they're not working anyway. But if they are working, they're not really loud. Most people are going to ignore them in the big box stores and in the airport, that kind of thing, a lot of noise. But if they do, then good, security will come and help. That's what the point is, right? But you grab it and go, no matter what the box says. All right, so does anybody have any question about that kind of thing?
About checking PVC first.
In the class for the instructor class, for dive master class, yeah, and rescue class, but it's more complicated. People aren't doing it right, and we have minutes. So you can think of it this way. Every minute when your heart isn't pumping, you lose 10% of your brain. Now, some people can lose more than others, I get it, but and that's a biological thing. Did you see the movie where the guy was 300 feet down doing oil rig stuff, and he was without oxygen for half an hour, and he recovered, no brain damage that anybody could figure out. He seemed normal, and yes, he was breathing gases in. Yes, he was at 300 feet, so pressure was there. Yes, it was cold. All those environmental factors were there, but still, his brain survived no oxygen for 30 minutes. So we don't know.
Well, the other thing is, if you remember, they say you only use a certain percentage of your brain anyhow. So you could be lucky. and
Somebody
it's
more
hard
than
to not
others,
use it. But also, sometimes it comes, you might have problems for a while and then it will reroute how you.
The brain will recover itself sometimes.
Neuroplasticity.
But you don't know. You don't
Yeah,
know.
you don't know.
It's all, it's not anything you think about when you're dealing with this to start with. You just do what you're supposed to do, get them to the hospital as quick as possible, and they will deal with it. The problem with the ABCs is, yes, you are checking air, and yes, but we were not even asking people to check this because they can't find it and they were wasting time. You only have minutes. Time's wasted, so you got to go for it. You got to get the blood pressure up in the head as quick as possible. That's the point. If somebody, you walk around the corner and you see somebody laying down on the ground, you don't know when they fell. Does it matter what we're going to do? No. And if I rescue somebody from underwater, bring them up, they're not breathing, I go through that whole thing, which, by the way, Patty person at dive shop was saying, they're thinking maybe we should get them back to the boat first. Stop messing around with the breathing and the getting the gear off and all that stuff. So get them back to the boat. Get them up there because we have all kinds of. The boat should have AEDs. I understand Mike used to tell me, well, we can't have AEDs on the boat because there's water and this is electricity and blah, blah, blah. I put it in a waterproof box. I don't care. And then if you're giving them oxygen, remove all that before you do the shock. But this is so, the AED increases an adult's chances so much, you gotta have one. Yeah, they're expensive, I get it, but it's like oxygen. If you don't see oxygen on a boat, don't get on it. Because they're telling you what they don't care about you. Right? That's my idea anyway. Or if you're on Mike's, what we used to do with desert divers, the instructors would use it for the morning after.
Oh.
And so there might or might not be oxygen in the bottle. That's what we were discovering. Anyway, so the main thing is take a class, get some training. It can be the dive shop and the other shops, they teach separate class, but it's part of the rescue part. You don't have to go through all the rescue part, you should, but take the class on this and kind of keep it up on top of your head to help somebody. We know how to do it and we can give them a chance. Anyway, so the other thing that might happen on a boat is choking. Yes.
So can you start all this? What if the guy's still breathing?
So if they're still breathing, you don't have to do that.
You don't have to do any of that, but what if you don't know if he's breathing or not?
Well, that's the thing. So the first 10 seconds so the first thing you're gonna do is see them. So this is not underwater. So they're on the boat now, or they're on the road, sidewalk, or somebody that you know at a party just falls down. Your first thing is you're gonna yell at them to try to wake them up as you approach, and then you're gonna tap them here, wake them up. No, while you're doing that, you're watching their chest. Is it rising and falling? That makes sense? You're seeing if they're breathing. If they're not,
Put your hand in front of their nose.
we're not even asking the general public anymore to, the BLS class we just taught, these are pharmacists and this is Walmart, Walgreens, where they put their head down close, put your ear close to their mouth and you're looking out over their chest. So you're listening, you're seeing.
So what if they, you think you've done all that and they do have a heartbeat barely, or they are breathing and you start CPR, are you gonna mess it up?
No.
Even though they're breathing and their heart's beating on a regular basis, if you start doing the compressions, it doesn't matter.
Well, if they wake up from that, what are they gonna say?
No, if they have a pulse, you're not gonna do CPR.
But what if you don't?
You won't know
what if
they have
you
a
don't
pulse.
feel it? What if you don't know
No, you
it?
won't know. Not generally. And we're not training the general public to look for a pulse. They can't find it. So you're wasting time. So this is time. So they're saying now, if you don't see breathing, assume that if the heart is still beating, it won't be very, very much longer. Start compressions because you're beating their heart for it.
And if you have an AED, that's gonna also kind of assess the situation for you.
Right. Yeah.
Stick them on the pads and then.
But the main thing is you just are gonna take, and this is very quick. Remember, they have seconds or minutes left. Because what do we call somebody who's not breathing?
Dead.
Yeah, they're dead. So that's a clinical death. I always ask the classes that because I don't want you to think you can make it worse. Can you make it worse than death? Can surgeons fix death? They can fix everything else. Like I said, they can replace your heart. They can fix bones, they can fix ligaments, they can fix all of that, but they can't fix death. So death is the main thing. You want to keep them alive. So you can't wait. If you don't think that they're breathing, you get 911 called and you get the ambulance moving and you start doing compressions. If you hear, oh, you can't stop, then you stop, yes, then you stop.
Then they sue you for breaking all their bones, right?
You did what you were supposed to do. Does that stop you from being sued? No. It stopped you from losing the suit, yes. And for it to go very far. That's important. The law was put in place so that nurses and doctors and EMTs off the job will stop and help up. Before that, they wouldn't touch them because they'd be sued. Because mostly people are gonna die, and then evidently, people expect you to be able to lay your hands on somebody and bring them back to life. I can't explain it, but that's what they do. Anyway, so getting into choking. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
They only have minutes to live, so you've got to make a decision pretty quick. And then, by the way, unless there's a bone problem, you're not probably going to break ribs. If you're doing what you're trained to do, which is basically come in straight up and down, right? You will separate the sternum from the ribs. And so at first, you'll hear what I call snap, crackle, pop, and then it'll get easier to push because you've torn out or stretched all the connecting tissue between the sternum and the ribs. The sternum isn't going anywhere; it's going to stay where it is, and that can be fixed. Broken ribs can be fixed. Death can't be, and they only have minutes where anything can be done for them. So that's the point. I think they're saying odds statistics are you're better off keeping them alive. Don't worry about that. Yes, you'll do some damage. Matter of fact, you have to. Because I tell people if they're dead, can you make it worse? No. Can you damage them? Yes, you have to. If you're not going deep enough to do that, what I just described, separating the sternum from the ribs, you're not going deep enough and it's not working. EMT told me that they get to the job and they would start doing compressions and they'd feel it and hear it. And so everything that was done before that didn't do anything. So you gotta go deep and fast. That's the idea. Anyway, choking, this is something that could happen on the boat, especially on Gary's boat where they make food right there for you. And you're talking about all the wonderful things you just saw, and that's when adults tend to choke. Because they're trying to talk and laugh and eat at the same time. So this guy, you can see, just a little bit of pizza causes that problem. So does everybody know what to do? I'll just go that real quick. So we don't call it that. Call it abdominal thrust. I only got sued because somebody died. Not because of that, but because they suffocated, right? It didn't work. And he got sued. What does he got to do with any of that? I don't know. But so he took his name out of that and they changed it anyway. It's the same thing, abdominal thrust. So it's 5 back blows. 5 back blows right between the ribs, hard, like hard, and then 5 abdominal thrusts, hard, like that. See it on YouTube, you can see that going on, and people are almost lifted off the ground. That's how hard it needs to be, up and in, right below the diaphragm, and put your fist and pull up and in really hard. So that's what we're teaching now. Then if they're in a wheelchair, or they're pregnant, or your arms are too short to get around them, then basically you can do back blows, but you do a chest. You can't really do that on a wheelchair, but you do chest thrust, meaning you put your hand up here and you're standing behind it, but you pull in really hard, trying to compress the lung. And what do you do if they collapse on you? So you've been doing this back and forth, back blows, abdominal thrust, back blows, abdominal thrust, and now a minute or two, and how long can you hold your breath, right, and still be awake? So they collapse. Part of your holding on to them is so that you don't have to let them just drop. Now, if anybody's ever had somebody, if you've ever felt somebody dead weight, they weigh 2 or 3 times more than they actually weigh under those conditions, it seems like. So you're not going to be able to stop them, but you might slow them down. Anyway, first thing you do is compressions, 30. And their throat is all loose now, because the longer that goes on, the tighter the throat gets. People drown without water in their lungs or much because their throats closed up. Anyway, so you've done that, you're doing compressions, and then you check in their mouth. Did you pump it out? So you open their mouth and look in, and if it's there, you grab it. Then you try to give them breaths. If that doesn't go in, there's still something there, and you go back and do the whole thing again. So all the compressions and breaths, and then you check in the mouth after you do compressions. So that's the difference. We would do that on the deck of the boat.
When you're doing the compressions, and each time you're going to look in it, and then you're going to, if there's something there, you take it out and then you try. But when if you try and you see the chest start to rise, then you can probably stop.
For whatever reason, you've gotten it out of the way. It may have been pushed down farther or whatever it happened. They do say, though, don't do a blind sweep. You may, mechanically, you're more likely to push it deeper than the breath pushing it deeper. You just don't put your mouth, don't put your finger in their mouth until you see it. See something. Same with kids, same with babies. All that's the same. We do choking differently on babies, by the way. It's totally different technique for little ones, but kids and adults, we do basically the same thing. Yeah, they're not diving. We hope. Although I've seen the little ones in the pool. I don't think it's before they get to be a year, but I don't know. People do that. I don't remember. I had my kids quote drown proof, but I remember when we did it. Anyway, so the last thing, I think this is the last thing. I just put this in here just because it's a thing. We're in Mexico, and even probably there's more here than there is in San Carlos, actually. But this is a possibility. And do you know why an opioid kills you? How does it kill you? How does an overdose kill you? Hopefully you don't know. Yes, you stop breathing. Eventually you stop breathing. And what he's doing there is naloxone, and naloxone interferes with, so it interferes with the breathing. This interferes with the interference, think of it that way. But it's a temporary fix, temporary. When finally ambulance gets there, they put a needle in their arm and they just continually feed it into them until the opioid is cleaned out, I guess. That's what's happening. I just want to warn you, out there in the world, you wouldn't probably be carrying it with you unless you have a relative or somebody you know has a problem. And it's somebody who forgets, maybe this isn't the real problem, me forgetting how many pills I've taken that night. The real problem is somebody who's addicted to this stuff. If you give them naloxone, you're bringing them out of la la land now. And so they're going into withdrawal now. And I've never experienced withdrawal, although I've had a hangover once or twice. It is painful, mentally and physically painful. Normally the withdrawal would happen over a little bit of time. It's coming out right now. And they're not going to be happy. So the scene is now unsafe for you. Talk to the sheriffs and they say, yeah, they come out swinging. Not swinging. So the point is, even if you see it, if I was the old term junkie, if I was somebody like that, I'd have that stuff in my pocket. You can get it. It's not that expensive. I'm sure you could make enough in half a day out on the street to get it. And the script is all there. You just go in and say, I want it. You pay for it and you get it.
Lots of clinics give it out.
Yeah, there are clinics in this county probably does that. I'd have it in my pocket. So if you see it there, you can think, do I want to do this, or do I want to let the EMTs do it who are trained to deal with somebody who's not going to be happy? Now, if it's your kid or your uncle or somebody, and they're not really addicted to this, right? This is an accident. That's a different matter. It's just they're warning me out there in the road. Be careful. I've seen docs with black eyes, and that's somebody just waking up, coming up like this, whacking them. This could be worse. Anyway, but you can help them with CPR. All you have to do is keep the blood pressure up in the head. That's your job. And if you don't want to go through the naloxone business, or you can't see it, or it's not there, or whatever, and just keep going. It's just the same as sudden cardiac arrest, as far as you're concerned. Anybody have? Oops. Last thing, sorry. Bleeding is the other thing that we might see on a boat. I used to joke, we have a knife, when we carry a knife with us, so we can stab our buddies when the shark comes and swim away. And then I thought, maybe I shouldn't say that. Somebody might take me seriously there. But if you get a big cut, life-threatening bleeding, do you know the difference? So you're looking for two things. You're looking for flow and you're looking for volume. Now flow you can see. So if it's going like this, it's an artery, right? And it also tells you something. Heart is still pumping. That's what it's telling you, right? If the blood is flowing and it's pumping out in an artery, or it's flowing really hard from a vein, at least the heart's still working right now. I mean, not for long, because you can die as quickly, well, almost as quickly from blood loss as you can from sudden cardiac arrest. So that means you see it, you got to deal with it. So what they'll tell you is a half a soda can of blood is life-threatening for an adult. It's even less of that with the kid. If you see a puddle of blood, it's life-threatening. Don't even think about it anymore. You don't see puddles of blood around people. If you see a puddle, no matter how big or how small, call. Then what do? You know, anybody know what you do now? Pressure.
If you could do pressure.
Yeah. And I don't, I'm trying to think, I have a tourniquet and I probably should put it in my bag, my dive bag, and have it with me. But tourniquets are the main thing on a limb. A few years ago, never use a tourniquet. Now they're the first line of defense if you've got one for a limb. Military and police have been using them for a long time. They didn't want us to use them, but for whatever reason. But if you're going to buy one, they're like, they used to be 20 to 30 bucks, 20 to 25. Now they're 25 to $30 for a CAT, combat action tourniquet. Those are the ones that you can put on with one hand. That's why the police and the military used them. The military, if they're out in the bush, they've got hand grenades on their vest and they've got tourniquets on their vest. They just carry it. They save your life. That's what they do. Anyway, but if you don't have one, pressure is the thing. And remember, we used to teach, if you took the class a while ago, we used to teach, put a pad over it, if you got one, or your t-shirt or their t-shirt, whatever, and then put your hand on it and squeeze. You think you could hold that for 10 minutes? No. And even if you use your finger, and you aren't applying enough pressure anyway, even if you use your fingertips, you apply that to yourself, you can feel how much more pressure you can apply that way. It's pounds per square inch here, but even there, you're not going to hold that for 10 minutes or more. It could be 20 minutes, you don't know. So what they're telling you to do now is, if you remember the position you're in when you're doing compressions, you get in that same position over the wound and you just squeeze down. You don't have to pump, you just squeeze down and you hold it as much pressure as you can put. That's what you're doing on a limb, especially. And hemostatic dressings are available now that they weren't before, because the formulation changed so they don't harden up and they don't cauterize the wound, which is what was going on. So the military was using all that, but that would save their life. And then surgeons would remove it later. The formulation changed, so now it kind of turns into a more jelly thing. So we can use it, and you can buy them little packs. They should be in your first aid kit. I think there is some expiration date on these, so you've got to keep an eye on them. But what it is, it's a powder that will coagulate the blood. So that's good for wounds in here and on your head where you don't want to put a tourniquet around there. And really, you can't apply a whole lot of pressure either. So those are the kinds of things that are available for life-threatening bleeding. It's a lot of pressure. You need to apply a ton of pressure. And this is what the videos are.
Noting the time is also important.
If you put a tourniquet on. So you're supposed to, on the CAT tourniquets, usually will have a little, you turn a windlass, you crank it down, crank it down till the bleeding stops. And then there's a little hook that you put the windlass in to hold it. And then there's usually a cover over that with a white piece of material that you can write the time on it. But if you don't have anything to write with, you do have something to write with, yes. And if you don't have that thing to write on, you put it on their forehead or on their arm. If nothing else, especially in a situation where you have multiple people using having to put tourniquets on, you put a T on their forehead so that the EMTs see there's a tourniquet somewhere on this body, somewhere here. Because most people are now going to be unconscious, so they can't really tell. If they're whining and moaning and yelling about how much it hurts, then the EMTs know that's a tourniquet on there. But if they're unconscious, put something on there to say there's especially if you cover them with a blanket or something afterwards. Want everybody to know there's one there. And you don't ever take it off. The EMTs or the hospital will take it off. You just leave it on. There's a reason why we were using them, because they thought it was going to cut off the blood supply, you're going to lose your limb. So it was better to die. Military, what can I tell you? We know that because in Vietnam, they didn't use them. I learned how to use them in Boy Scouts before that. So I was shocked that they weren't using them, but they were afraid of losing limbs. And then they went back and figured out how many guys would have been saved had they had tourniquets. And it was a lot. So from that point on, they, like I said, they carry them everywhere. There was a YouTube video, you can see everything on YouTube, of a firefight on the edge of on the side of the road. And first thing you wonder is, who's videoing this? But there's a guy shooting at cops and they're shooting back. And the camera swings over and you see the cop and he gets hit. You don't really know exactly what, but you can see him jerk back. Then he swings over to the guy who's shooting and he swings back. So we're talking 10 seconds, 15 seconds at the most. And then you see that he's already got his tourniquet on. So he must have gotten shot somewhere in the arm and put that tourniquet on. So that's how quick they do it. Anyway, so direct pressure is what we normally would have unless you're carrying one of those around with you until the first aid kit comes. Any first aid kits should have a tourniquet, at least one. In home, at your office, wherever. Now you should have them. They're not that expensive, considering that they may save your life. So any other questions? Yeah.
Not contradicting what you're saying, but the one thing that you do have to realize here is legally, that does open you up to going beyond the Good Samaritan.
What?
The tourniquet.
No, it doesn't. I'm training you to use it.
Really?
Yeah, it's in my training, my initial training, and then I have what does the Red Cross call that? They took everything out that wasn't life-threatening out of the main class, and then they added, you can add more stuff. And one of them is more information, more practice with the tourniquet. But when I'm doing blood, the blood pressure stuff, I do show them how to use a tourniquet.
We get training every year through Boulder Canyon Fire Department where I work. And that has been a subject that came up because we do lose limbs and we do lose fingers where I work. And the tourniquet thing, that was one of the things that they basically said is, if you use a tourniquet, yes, it will work. And yes, sometimes you have to deal with reality of whether you're going to get sued or something. That's, like you said, down the road. But it is going beyond the capability of the normal human, of the normal person, the normal civilian of doing that. I'm not saying that it doesn't save lives. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that we were told that it can open you up to a lawsuit because the Good Samaritan law was not probably the first question they're going to ask you, are you a medical doctor to be able to make that decision? And again,
they're all going to ask,
I'm not denying.
They're going to ask that question on anything you do. That's what they warn you about lawyers.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
And it's the other thing is,
something good to know.
You never say the word patient. Now, the BLS class, I taught to people who, yeah, they can use that term. We shouldn't use that term because the lawyer is going to turn that around on you. Are you a doctor? Why should you say patient? It is a victim. It is a lot of other things. So we are training people to use them.
So maybe the law
So it
is
is
changed.
part of it should be part of the Good Sam law that you are trained to use it, because it does say if you were trained to do a tracheotomy, you could do one. But we're not trained to do that. Like they do when we stick a pin down in here or something. You can't do any of that. But we are training people how to use a tourniquet, and it is like an AED. It is so simple to use. There is one thing I will mention because someone mentioned it to me. If you're using a tourniquet on a leg on a guy, it's high up, make sure only the leg is under the tourniquet. That hurts every time I say it, sorry. But that was a real story.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah.
Can you go over, using oxygen? So if you were to give someone, CPR and they started breathing, could you get them on oxygen if you were away? I mean,
If you have oxygen, yeah, that will help.
use it if you have it.
Especially if
for
you're
almost
using
anything.
something like this, which we aren't going to use a BBM, but this one, for instance, has a little valve on it. To hook up oxygen. The only thing you have to remember is if you're going to hook up an AED, that doesn't work together. You can't do the shock while oxygen is around. So you have to unplug all that, get it away, turn it off. And this is what, if you didn't know, everybody should know, we have an oxygen kit you can check out. Charlie does that when they go down. Like I said, this should be on everybody's boat. So we have this tank and we have a bigger tank. It's also available to take. So we have more oxygen available. I think the Duke, when I was teaching on that, he must have had big tanks of oxygen because we're going clear across maybe hours and hours to get back in.
So if you have an accident on a boat and you're at the island and you're going back to San Carlos and you have someone that's had some kind of accident, you put them on oxygen just kind of preventatively to help them out to get stronger.
Oxygen does help you, because what are we giving them when we give breaths? You know, you're giving them your leftover oxygen. And what is that? So it's 21% in the air. We breathe it in and we use it. So it's one of the gases that we do use. And then we breathe it out. And when we breathe out, we're giving out about 16%, something like that. A human can live on 10 or about 10%. That was the problem they were having in the biosphere way back. We were around when that was going on. They were down to 16, 15% in the biosphere at some point. You cannot function under that. And then at some point, you're not going to make it. So we're giving them 16%. We can give them 100%, even if it's not a pressure injury. You know, it's not that. If we give them a little more, that will be of help. But again, when you're going to use electricity around it, you have to shut it down. Right. So everything is in here. So we have we've got various kinds of masks. Depending on if they're awake, you just give them a free flow of oxygen so that they're breathing it. If you're trying to they're unconscious, you have to give them something so that if they're breathing, you have to give them something so that it's hooked onto them, so that they're continually breathing that gas. And if they're not, then I don't think we have. We don't have the expensive item that push a button and it breathes. It's in the garage. But again, if you're using a mask and you're flowing oxygen through this, and you're giving them your oxygen and then whatever's going in here, that generally will help. Best way I can describe it. Can you come up with reasons why you wouldn't do that? Yeah, but I can't think of one at this point. Can you? From the fire? Yeah, pretty much anything they do from the ambulance are going to put oxygen on you. Anybody have any other questions? Well, hopefully that's enough to make sure you take some classes and learn how to do this right. Yeah, it's pretty simple. The main thing is, if you're in the water and your buddy has got a problem, I mean, if you're rescuing somebody, you have to go search. So part of our thing is search for them. Probably, except for that one guy, half an hour, right? He got rescued half an hour later and still was alive. But if they're just a problem and you get them to the surface and they're not breathing, they drowned, or they may have had a heart attack, or they may have sudden cardiac arrest. What is sudden cardiac arrest besides those things I described? Why does that happen? Why are all these muscles working independently? Yeah. Yeah. So if you know more about how the heart works, there is a node that controls all the other nodes. If that one stops working, other nodes will take control generally. But if it's, so there's an electrical storm going on inside the heart, is what's going on. So they're not listening. They're like the 10-year-olds. They're not listening to the teacher anymore, and chaos ensues. But other than that,
Maybe we should get some refresher rescue courses. I don't think anyone's offering
they are, the dive shop offers them, and the other,
refresher.
oh, I don't know. What do you call it?
We don't have any refreshers on the website now. But certainly add them to it.
It would be more like what we did in the pool, and trying to go through all those steps I was talking about to get them out of the water. And then we do have, you can challenge or you can take a refresher. So if you get from American Heart, HSI, or Red Cross, all of those will teach a class, and they're good for 2 years. And then if you can re-up before the 2 years or within a short time after your thing expires, you can take a refresher course, which will be a shorter course. And you can, if you don't want to spend the 4.5 hours, it used to be 6 hours, something like that, to do these courses, and they've got them down to 4.5 for the full instructor-led adult pediatric AED, all of that. It's about 4.5 hours. If you take the blended class, which we call a blended class, meaning you take part of it online and then you come in and do the skills, that's about a 2.5 hour course. And if you want to know how much they cost, you can go out to the Red Cross. That's a good place to go, because it just, everybody in town who does these classes will advertise on their site, and you can kind of get a feel for what the charges are. What the Red Cross is usually going to be the floor, and everybody will, or the high point, and everyone will try to come in underneath that. But the shops all teach it. You know, do. And what was that big thing you did, Adrian, for somebody? We had a whole bunch of people, and I came in and helped them with some of my stuff. You can, if you want to get a whole group.
Oh, that was for company.
Yeah.
Dean had all of his employees go through the course.
Which is basically what I did at Walgreens today, a whole bunch of people. So if we wanted to, I guess we could go negotiate that with them. You know, their price per person will be cheaper if you've got a bunch of people. It certainly is for me. If I do one person, I charge X amount, and if I get 12 people, then I charge, that I can negotiate that. But I do this, luckily, like a scuba instructor, not to make money, because you're not gonna, if you own the business, you'll either lose it or you'll make money, one of the two. But as instructors, you just end for Red Cross, and I train instructors for Red Cross. Most of them are coming in because the business wants them to do it, and the business is paying. It's a pretty expensive course. It's 8 hours without breaks and without a lunch break, so it's like a 9-hour job all day long. And but the companies are sending them in. Most people aren't doing this to make money. So I'm on a mission to teach people how to save somebody's life. And I've been doing this since when did I become an instructor? We had to learn to, I don't remember if it was medic first aid, it was somebody, whatever Patty or SSI was using at the time. So I've been teaching since 2000. We had to teach that course. And we've done a lot of rescue courses. I doubt if I could rescue anybody anymore, but I'm addicted. So I'm going to keep diving until I can either die in bed with my boots on, or I can die with my fins on, one of the two. Like I said, I'm a scuba-holic. Anybody have any other questions? So these are things you want, and the rescue class will teach you how to look for all this stuff, what to do in the case for you and your buddy and other folks right around you. You want to be a dive master. The dive master course teaches you how to pay attention to everybody that's around you, not just your group, but the whole boat, for instance, and how to stop problems before they start and all those kind of things. That's what the dive master course is.
So thank you so much, Vance. I think we're supposed to be out of here by 8:30, so we gotta like boogie. But thank you so much. Great presentation.